We're going to create a monopoly on the initiation of violence, and they'll probably decide we'll only stay, a certain reasonable size. Well, I mean, how much empirical evidence do you need to disprove the idea that that's even possible? And in fact, there's a pretty strong correlation between relatively small states becoming the biggest states. It's not a coincidence that the United States of America, which started as this experiment in restrained government, with all these brilliant thinkers who wrote all about checks and balances and divisions of power, well, now it's the biggest state that's ever existed in the history of humanity.
The most effective strategy for bringing about a stateless society is not politics at all. I don't think we're going to send our prayers up in the voting booth and hope that the authorities grant us this kind of supreme freedom.
Markets are the most common way for people to meet their needs. Many anarchist theories have offered market solutions for services that are often defined as public goods, such as law, defense, security, and education.
The entrepreneur is sort of the fundamental agent who drives forward the market economy, right? Look at all the goods and services that we have around us, the chairs we're sitting in, this building in which we're doing this recording, the equipment, the camera, and computers and so forth that we're using. Where did all those things come from? They have to be produced by human beings, right, who exercise forethought and planning and have a deliberate purpose and use their ingenuity and so forth to come up with ways, to convert the inputs that are given by nature, natural resources and land and energy and human labor and so forth. Those have to be converted or transformed into iPhones and buildings and automobiles and food that we can eat and so forth. So the entrepreneurial function is this taking command of resources and making them into stuff that you can try to offer to consumers in the future, not knowing for sure whether you'll be successful or not. If you are successful, if you're good at anticipating future conditions, you can produce a thing that consumers will want and will pay more than what it costs you, right, to make the thing, and you earn a profit. If you're unsuccessful, you earn a loss. It's this constant pursuit of profit and desire to avoid loss that animates the process of production and makes all this stuff around us available. As Ludwig von Mises said, it is impossible to picture a market economy or to have a picture of a market economy without the entrepreneur. This agent, this agency constantly pushing and promoting and moving the economy forward.
Technology is a good example of that, where companies are having to hire all sorts of specialized labor to interact with one another to try to come up with improvements in the product or improvements in production. And so that's the order that anarchy brings, because it is all based on voluntary activities that are meant to be efficient and meant to be productive and meant to be mutually beneficial.
That's what's really ironic about that perennial question of who will build the roads is, in the current system, it's not usually that it's literal employees of the state who are building roads. It's just the state has contracts and they farm it out to various bidders.
As it is now, poor people pay for the roads even though they never use them or never go anywhere. But people who are maybe higher income and travel a lot around the metro area or travel up to tourist spots and so on, they're using those roads more. If you turn those into toll roads, they'd have to pay more, and then they would be annoyed by that. Whereas right now, you're charging grandma to pay for that road that she never ever uses because she's like a shut-in. And so that evens out the cost then for people.
On the I-10, which is a big highway that goes past New Orleans all the way from Florida to California, the minimum speed is 40 and the maximum speed is 70. Well, maybe it would be better if the speed in this lane was 50 and 65 and 80. Would that reduce that? I don't know. All I know is if different people try different things. Now on your road, you're going to make it 60, 70, and 80. And on someone else's road, it's going to be 65, 70, and 75. Maximum speed. Well, which of those is better? I don't know.
I think that just as Ben Franklin set up a private firefighting service, There's no reason at all that all the fire departments, which also engage in a form of protection, need to be government.
Private education solutions include private schools, tutoring, homeschooling, and unschooling.
We have the idea that, well, every child deserves an education. It's impossible to imagine the market providing that level of education. Therefore, it needs to be provided by local, state, national government, etc. Education is a special kind of a good. People will say, well, maybe the market can produce toothpaste in appropriate quantities and qualities, but not education. Education is a different kind of a thing. It's a so-called public good, can't be provided by the market, must be provided by the state, and we have to require that every student get this education. And that's why we have compulsory attendance laws. Okay, look, I'm a professional educator. Do I think education in the abstract is important? You bet I do. But education is not a thing, right? There's not just one homogeneous blob of education where everybody gets one unit of education or no education, right? Education is just like any other good or service on the market, right? We don't actually consume education, something in the abstract, but we read books, we attend classes, and as adults, right, you can hire a consultant to educate you on something. You can watch a documentary film like this one and educate yourself. You can read a book, you can talk to somebody, you can participate in a discussion group, you can go online, right? There are all kinds of ways that we get educated, but the things we consume are specific, discrete, marginal units of a thing that I read or a lecture that I heard or whatever. And are those things bought and sold in markets? Yeah, ask Amazon.com or any, or Hollywood or a college or university, a for-profit college, university, or school. Of course, people buy educational goods and services all the time.
The current government educational system emphasizes a general curriculum where everybody learns the same thing. So you have survey courses in college on Western civilization, right? Everybody learns the same thing, and you're told what to think about it. And also, conveniently, studying the course of Western civilization, which is important, but you're told what to think, and you are not told about the key factors of the rise of Western civilization, which is private property, free markets, and sound money. Those, if you've taken those classes, I took a couple when I was in college, Western Civ 1 and Western Civ 2, and inflation was mentioned once, even though it's the thing that brings down civilizations time after time. And so getting back to that, I think, people would be exposed to great ideas, they would appreciate great ideas, and they would think for themselves.
Private alternatives for criminal justice are gaining popularity due to the inefficiency and unreliability of state courts and police. Private dispute resolution is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and much of the security in society is already produced privately in the form of security firms, neighborhood watch groups, and private gun ownership.
Courts can be private. We see that every day in private adjudication systems, in arbitration systems. Police, we see that every day in the form of security, private security at places like Disneyland. And as far as national defense goes, I think it's largely a myth. I don't think that the rest of the world is particularly looking to come invade America. And even if it was, I think that the notion that security could be provided on the marketplace is something that's absolutely tenable and that we need to look at. Well, I think there would be lawyers even in a free society. I think there would still be conflicts. I think there would still be contracts that would occasionally be breached. I think there would still be disputes between neighbors, disputes amongst in business. I think there's a lot of ways in which lawyers would still be a thing in a private society and might still have a market function in drafting contracts and representing people in what we would hope would be some form of common law courts or private arbitration.
Well, for normal sort of police services, I think the way people would think of it nowadays, just with private agencies fulfilling those services, and notice the big difference here is there would be competition. So right now, if just imagine a grocery store, they hired an agency to crack down on shoplifting.